Today's lesson will be on race signals and flags. So we have a lot of material to cover today, and I've listed it out here for you. So first of all, we're going to be covering the difference between windward and leeward, or essentially upwind and downwind. Secondly, we'll be taking a look at the race course, so exactly how a sailboat race occurs. Next, we'll be taking a look at the actual countdown to a race, so how a sailboat race progresses from a time start. And then lastly, we'll have a quick review of all of the material that we'll be covering today. So before we begin, I have some handouts for you, and I'd like you just to follow with the handouts, and if you do have any questions as we progress through the lesson, this may give you a hand. So if you want to take one of those, please. So first of all, as sailors, we need to know what direction the wind is coming from. The wind, of course, powers our sailboat, so the wind is very, very important to us. So if I say we have a northerly wind, what does that mean to you?
Coming from the north?
Yeah, exactly. That's an excellent way to describe it. So if we look at the cardinal points, or the points of the compass, we can draw those out. North, south, west, east. We see we have a northerly wind. Of course, then the wind is coming from the north. Pretty straightforward. But there's another way that we can describe exactly how the wind is affecting us. Let me illustrate. If you're thinking of planning on buying a house, for example, and the city that you lived in had a great big factory, and lots of smokestacks pouring out of the factory. And if there's only two houses, there is one house on this side of the factory and one house on this side of the factory. How would we describe these houses in relation to the wind? If the wind was coming in this direction, how would we describe those houses?
Upwind or downwind.
Excellent. This house would be upwind, this house would be downwind. We use the same terminology in sailing, just a little bit different. We use slightly different words. So if we can imagine ourselves on the water, say we have the wind coming in this direction, and here's our sailboat, and we're standing on the sailboat, we can describe how the wind is hitting the sailboat in relation to us. So the wind that hits the side of the sailboat first is called the windward side, or the upwind side. It's the same word. Just on the water we use a different terminology. So the wind hits the windward side of the boat first. As the wind progresses over the boat, it hits the opposite side. This is called the downwind side, which we've already discovered. But in sailing terminology, this is called the leeward side. So we have windward and leeward. The difference between the two, the windward side is the side that the wind hits first. The leeward side is the side the wind hits last. In sailing terminology, that's why I use those two words. Now, windward and leeward are important terms to understand when we're setting up a race course, because most typically, a typical race course will use what's called a windward-leeward layout. So when we're racing a sailboat, we can't make, of course, a permanent track on the water because wind and waves move the sailboat around. It's just not feasible to do that. So we have to set floating markers out in the water to determine where we're going to be making those turns for the boat. And we describe those turns as a windward and a leeward mark. So if we were to imagine this was our start line for our sailboat race, and again the wind is coming from this direction, we would set a mark out here somewhere. This is called our windward mark. Why is this called the windward mark?
What the wind hits first.
Excellent, what the wind hits first. The second mark would be sitting out here somewhere. We would call this one the leeward mark. Why is that one called the leeward?
Last.
Excellent. The wind hits this mark after the windward mark. Now, to make things interesting, a typical sailboat race is usually in the shape of a triangle, so an additional mark is added. Out here in the corner, it's called the jibe mark. The name's not really important, but what's important to note here is that the jibe mark just provides us another turn for us to get to the leeward mark. So a typical race within a sailboat race rather, we would start from the start-finish line, we would sail up to the windward mark, we would sail parallel across the wind, make our turn at the jibe mark, and then sail downwind past the leeward mark. This is also called an upwind, downwind course because we're sailing up towards the wind, we sail parallel to the wind, and we sail downwind. This is also called a windward-leeward course. Same terminology, upward, downwind, windward, leeward. So that's exactly, essentially, how a sailboat race would occur, the actual course. So now that we have the course set, we now need to have an understanding of how we get the boats operating from the start. So if you haven't seen a sailboat race before, I'd like to show you this quick video, which will give you a demonstration of a typical sailboat race.
15, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 9.